British Airways, which is where I am now, is now serving that lager on their flights.
44,900,000 pounds. That's what a Cotswolds lager brand did in sales last year. Not a global giant. Not a brand you'd have recognized 5 years ago. A beer made from barley grown on a diddly-squat farm field. And it's not staying on the farm. British Airways now serves that same lager on its flights.
Is now serving that lager on their flights. Kid you not, they are. Fuck me, that's good.
A drink that started as one farmer's side project is now being poured somewhere over the Atlantic. And here's the part almost nobody talks about. This isn't a one-off spike. This is 3 years running on the Sunday Times list of Britain's fastest-growing private companies. Not drinks companies. Every private company in the country, across every industry. Let that sink in for a second, because the trajectory is the real story here. Year 1, 7.8 million pounds. 24th place nationally, out of every private company on the list. Year 2, 21.3 million, nearly triple, top of the entire Southwest region. Year 3, 44.9 million. Still climbing, still outpacing almost everything else on that list. Say that last number again slowly. 44,900,000 pounds. From a brewery most of the country had never heard of 5 years ago. A brand nobody was talking about in 2021 outgrew the market by 2026. So how does that actually happen? Not the marketing story. The one buried in company's house filings, not press releases. It starts before Jeremy Clarkson ever touched it. The company was originally called Cotswold Brewing Company, registered in 2004 by Rick and Emma Keane in Bourton-on-the-Water, Gloucestershire. Back then, it wasn't chasing fame or fast growth. It was quietly making lagers at a time when almost every small British brewery was making ale instead. A slower, less fashionable bet that happened to be exactly right. That obsession with getting the lager right is what caught Clarkson's attention. In 2021, he and entrepreneur Johnny Hornby bought into the business, using barley grown on Diddley Squat Farm to create what became Hawkstone Lager. A year later, the company dropped the old name entirely and rebranded as Hawkstone. That's when the growth curve you just heard actually begins. Here's the detail that explains far more about this story than most coverage bothers to dig into. How fast the handover of control actually happened. May 23, 2024. Rick and Emma Keane, the original founders, stepped down from the board. May 24th. 1 day later, Jeremy Clarkson is formally registered as the company's controlling owner, between 25 and 50% of shares and voting rights. Johnny Hornby follows 7 weeks later on the same terms. 1 day. Founders out, Clarkson legally in charge. That's not a slow drift of ownership. That's someone moving the moment the opportunity was there, and locking it down immediately. He didn't do it alone either. Around the same window, Owen Jenkins was brought in as managing director, appointed in July 2024, right in the middle of that ownership shift. Before Hawkstone, Jenkins worked at C&C Group, the company behind Magners and Tennent's, two of the biggest names in British drinks. You don't hire someone out of a major drinks conglomerate by accident. That's a recruitment call made on purpose, to get his playbook working for Hawkstone instead of against it. But the people who actually built this business weren't pushed out the door. There's continuity underneath all of that change too. Hugh Van Kootsum has sat on the board since March 2019, years before Clarkson had anything to do with the business. He's watched the Keane years, the Clarkson takeover, and everything since, without ever leaving. And Rick Keane himself, the man who built the lager recipe in the first place, is still there today as master brewer, even after handing over control. The people who know how to actually make the beer never left the building. The people running the business around them just grew a lot more ambitious. Now, ambitious is putting it mildly. Clarkson has talked publicly about exactly where he wants this to end up, and he doesn't do it quietly. In his own words, he wants Hawkstone in 2,000 pubs from the Pacific Northwest to Brisbane. Sit with that number for a second. That's not a man happy with a nice little farm shop beer. That's a man who bought into a 20-year-old Cotswolds brewery and is now talking about putting it in front of drinkers on the other side of the planet. And judging by the numbers so far, that ambition is already on track. Here's the part that separates this from the average celebrity brand cash-in, how the growth is actually being paid for. Most fast-growing brands quietly sell off pieces of themselves to outside investors just to keep the lights on. That's not what happened here. In March 2025, the company registered a new secured lending facility with Barclays, the same bank that had backed the business years earlier, long before Clarkson was even involved. That's an ordinary bank loan, the kind any serious growing business takes out to fund expansion. No outside conglomerate stepping in to bankroll the operation. No slice of the company quietly handed over to somebody else's balance sheet. On top of that, this summer the company created an entirely new class of shares called growth shares, a way of bringing in new owners and rewarding the people building the business as the value keeps climbing, without touching what Clarkson and Hornby already hold. It's the kind of move a company makes when it's planning to keep expanding the team around it, not when it's trying to quietly offload control. Put it together with the Barclays facility, and what you're looking at is a business funding its own growth on its own terms. Now think about what's actually powering all of this beer, because that's grown too, in a way that matters beyond the balance sheet. Hawkstone started as one idea, barley from one farm, Clarkson's own 1,000 acres at Diddley Squat. But the scale this business is operating at now is bigger than any one farm could feed on its own. So these days, Hawkstone brings in grain from other British farms as well, not only Diddley Squat. Every extra pint sold puts real money into British barley growers well beyond Clarkson's own land. A brand that started as one farmer's side project is now pulling a slice of the wider British farming industry along with it. Now, for the one thing even the numbers can't nail down cleanly, worth being upfront about rather than pretending everything lines up perfectly. Different sources report different staff totals for the same period. Some reporting puts Hawkstone's headcount at 35 people for the year to March 2025. Other reporting, covering that exact same window, says the number grew from 28 to 53. Those two figures can't both be exactly right. Nobody's hiding anything here. This is just what happens when a company is expanding fast enough that even the people writing about it can't quite keep their notes in sync. If anything, that mismatch is its own kind of evidence. When outside reporting can't agree on your headcount, it's usually because you're growing faster than anyone outside the building can track in real time. £7.8 million turning into £44.9 million inside 3 years. That's not luck. A famous face on a can didn't do that by itself. That's a business that made a series of deliberate calls one after another, and every single one of them paid off. Here's what's still ahead. The accounts covering that £44.9 million year haven't actually been filed yet. They're still to come. When they land, that will be the first time this year's number gets confirmed on the public record, rather than just reported in the press. Given the pattern of the last 3 years, don't expect that filing to slow anything down. And while all of this has been playing out in boardrooms and filing cabinets, the wider Hawkstone name has been having a moment in public too, with a farmer's choir set up under the brand-crowned champion on Britain's Got Talent this year. Same name, same momentum, showing up in completely different places at once. So here's the question worth putting to you. Out of everything Clarkson's built around that one farm, the beer, the pub, the show itself, which business do you think is actually the smartest move he's made? Not the most famous one, the smartest one. If you had to bet your own money on which of Clarkson's ventures still looks this strong 5 years from now, would it even be the lager? Or is there a bigger story here that hasn't been told yet? Drop your answer in the comments, and tell us which one of Clarkson's businesses you want this channel to dig into next. If this kind of deep dive into the numbers behind the headlines is what you come here for, subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of story we're going to keep digging into.